The briefing room at the forward operating base in Alaska smelled of stale coffee, gun oil, and aggressive impatience. It was a windowless concrete box designed to contain classified conversations and the inflated egos of men who killed for a living. At the head of the table sat Marcus Hale. He was a man carved from granite and bad intentions, an ex-Navy SEAL whose reputation didn't just precede him, it kicked the door down first. He was currently leaning back in his chair, boots up on the tactical map, cleaning a serrated combat knife with a level of boredom that suggested he found the upcoming mission beneath him. Around him were three other contractors: Tech Miller, a communications specialist who twitched like he was over-caffeinated; Silas, a heavy weapons expert who looked like a bear that had learned to shave; and Jensen, a medic who rarely spoke. "We're burning daylight," Marcus grumbled, checking his watch. "Command said the handler would be here at 800. If they send another suit from Langley to tell me how to hold a rifle, I'm walking." "Maybe it's not a suit," Tech offered, typing furiously on a ruggedized laptop. "The manifest just lists a clearance code. Level 10. That's usually reserved for ghosts or politicians." "Ghosts don't exist and politicians don't come this far north," Marcus scoffed. "It's going to be some desk jockey who thinks warfare is a spreadsheet." The heavy steel door at the back of the room didn't bang open. It didn't creak. It simply clicked, the heavy magnetic seal disengaging with a soft hiss. The room went silent, but not out of respect. It was the silence of confusion. Walking in was a woman who looked nothing like the military personnel they were used to. She wore no camouflage, no tactical vest, and certainly no rank insignia. She was dressed in a high-collared, charcoal-gray wool coat tailored with severe precision, dark trousers, and heavy-duty Arctic boots that were scuffed with fresh snow. Her hair was pulled back in a knot so tight it looked painful. She carried nothing but a slim black tablet. She didn't look at the men. She walked directly to the head of the table. Marcus didn't move his boots from the table. He just stared, an amused smirk playing on his lips. He waited for her to introduce herself, to apologize for being late, to show some sign of intimidation in a room full of apex predators. She did none of those things. She placed the tablet on the table, tapped the screen once, and the holographic projector in the center of the room flickered to life, displaying a 3D schematic of a massive subterranean complex. Only then did she look up. Her eyes were a piercing icy blue, not cold but devoid of unnecessary noise. "Get your feet off my table, Mr. Hale," she said. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't carry the gravelly timbre of a drill sergeant. It was flat, calm, and terrifyingly absolute. Marcus chuckled, a low rumble in his chest. "I think you're in the wrong room, sweetheart. The admin staff meeting is down the hall. We're waiting for the mission commander." The woman didn't blink. She didn't blush. She didn't get angry. She simply turned her head slightly, regarding him like a biologist observing a mildly interesting bacteria under a microscope. "I am the commander," she said. "My name is Dr. Ilara Voss, and as of 60 seconds ago, I respond for this operation. Now, feet down." The air in the room shifted. The other three men exchanged nervous glances. Marcus slowly, deliberately, swung his legs off the table. He stood up, towering over her by at least 6 inches. He projected a threat posture, shoulders squared, chin down, a biological dominance display intended to trigger a flight response in a weaker opponent. "Dr. Voss," Marcus said, dragging out the title like an insult. "With all due respect, this is the extraction and recovery op in hostile territory. I don't see a rank on your collar. I don't see a sidearm. What I see is a liability. You ever been downrange? You ever had to make a call when the comms go dead and you're taking fire?" Ilara finally turned her full body toward him. "Situation awareness is not about holding a gun, Mr. Hale. It is about processing variables. For example, you are currently posturing to assert dominance because your ego is threatened by a civilian authority figure. You are relying on your physical stature and your history as a SEAL to intimidate me. It's a primitive OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, act, stuck on the orient phase because you cannot categorize me." The room went deathly quiet. "I don't need to have been downrange to know that your left knee was reconstructed 3 years ago after a botched extraction in Yemen," Ilara continued, her voice remaining perfectly conversational. I know that you favor your right side when you breach, which creates a 0.4-second blind spot on your periphery. And I know that in 2019, during Operation Nightfall, you survived an ambush in the Hindu Kush only because the extraction protocol was shifted at the last second to a secondary LZ. Marcus froze. His eyes narrowed. That's classified. Deep black. How do you know about the shift to LZ Bravo? Because I wrote the algorithm that rerouted your bird, Alara said. I didn't save you because I cared about you, Mr. Hale. I saved you because the asset you were carrying was worth more than the fuel required to alter the flight path. I deal in logistics, probability, and outcome. Now sit down. We have work to do. Marcus stared at her for a long, heavy moment. The disrespect didn't vanish, but it was suddenly mixed with confusion. He sat. Ilara tapped the table again. The hologram zoomed in on a location deep in the Arctic Circle. This is Blackmere Station, Ilara began. Officially, it was a geothermal research facility decommissioned in the late 90s. The cover story was that the permafrost became too unstable for the foundation. The truth is vastly more complex. Let me guess, Silas grunted. Bioweapons, aliens, data, Ilara corrected. In the Cold War, analog data storage was physical, heavy, vulnerable. Blackmere was built as a deep archive, a concrete tomb for intelligence that couldn't be destroyed but couldn't be kept in Washington. It is a vault of secrets. 3 days ago, a distress beacon was activated from the interior. So it's a rescue mission, Jensen, the medic said softly. No, Ilara replied. The facility has been automated for 20 years. There should be no one there to activate a beacon, which means one of two things, either a glitch in the legacy system or someone has breached the facility. And if someone's inside? Marcus asked, his voice still edged with skepticism. Then we treat them as a hostile entity stealing state secrets, Ilara said. However, the primary danger is not human. It is structural and environmental. This is where the educational component of your briefing begins, gentlemen. Listen closely. She expanded the schematic to show the geological layers around the station. Blackmere is built into a degradation zone. The permafrost here is thawing. When permafrost thaws, the ground doesn't just get wet, it loses structural cohesion. The methane trapped in the ice expands. We are essentially walking into a building that is resting on a ticking time bomb of pressurized gas and shifting mud. Heavy munitions are prohibited. One grenade in the wrong corridor could trigger a pneumatic collapse that buries us under 1 million tons of ice. Marcus laughed dryly. No grenades. Got it. Anything else, Doctor? Yes. The psychological factor, Ilara said, ignoring his tone. Blackmere utilizes a defensive architecture known as confusional design. The corridors are non-linear. The acoustics are designed to amplify low-frequency sounds, infrasound. It causes anxiety, hallucinations, and nausea in humans after prolonged exposure. It was designed to keep Soviet spies from wanting to explore too deep. It will have the same effect on you. We're trained to handle stress, Marcus dismissed. You are trained to handle adrenaline, Ilara corrected. You are not trained to handle sensory dissonance. The brain relies on vestibular cues to maintain balance and sanity. Blackmere disrupts that. Trust your instruments, not your senses. If you see something that doesn't make sense, check your vitals, not your weapon. She looked around the table. Our objective is simple. Infiltrate. Secure the server core. Verify the source of the signal. Extract. We have a 4-hour window before a storm front, cyclonic system alpha, hits the region. If we are not out by then, the temperature drops to -60 and the chopper cannot fly. We will be trapped. 4 hours for a deep clear? Marcus shook his head. That's tight. It's precise, Ilara said. Preparation is the separation between anxiety and control. Gear up. We leave in 10. The helicopter ride was a shuddering ordeal of turbulence and gray whiteness. The tactical team sat strapped in the back, checking weapons. Ilara sat opposite them, reading on her tablet. She didn't look like she was going to war. She looked like she was commuting to a lecture. Marcus watched her. He couldn't reconcile the woman with the voice. I wrote the algorithm that rerouted your bird, It gnawed at him. He prided himself on being the master of his own fate, the sheepdog protecting the flock. The idea that his survival was just a variable in a math equation solved by a woman in a wool coat was insulting. "So," Marcus shouted over the rotor noise, leaning in. "You're an analyst. CIA? Independent contractor," Ilara said without looking up. "My firm specializes in crisis management for non-standard environments." "Crisis management," Marcus repeated. "That usually involves lawyers and PR teams, not tactical insertions." "Warfare has changed, Hale. It used to be about kinetic force, who could throw the biggest rock. Now it is about information asymmetry. The side that understands the environment better wins. Always. Bullets don't care about math. Bullets are physics, Marcus. Trajectory, velocity, wind shear. Everything is math, even you." The pilot's voice crackled over the headset. "LZ in sight. Visibility is near zero. We have crosswinds at 40 knots. It's going to be a hard landing." "Set us down on the east ridge," Ilara commanded over the comms. "Negative," Marcus barked. "Standard protocol is the South Valley. It's sheltered from the wind." Ilara pressed her headset. "Pilot, override. The South Valley is a topographical funnel. The wind creates a venturi effect there. The snow depth will be deceptive, powder over crevasses. The east ridge is exposed, yes, but it is solid bedrock. Land on the ridge." "Command," the pilot hesitated. "The seal says south." "I am the mission commander," Ilara said calmly. "The seal is cargo until we touch the ground. East ridge. Now." Marcus glared at her, his face turning a shade of red. "If we crash on that ridge because of wind shear, I'm haunting you." "If we land in the valley," Ilara replied, "we trigger an avalanche due to the acoustic vibration of the rotors in a contained space. Physics, Marcus." The helicopter banked hard, fighting the gale. It slammed down onto the rocky outcrop of the east ridge with a bone-jarring thud, but it held. As the ramp lowered, the team looked down into the South Valley below. A massive shelf of snow, disturbed merely by the approach of the chopper, was sliding silently into the basin where Marcus had wanted to land. If they had touched down there, they would have been buried under 30 feet of white death. Marcus stared at the avalanche. He swallowed hard. Ilara stood up, buttoning her coat. "Let's move. The clock is ticking." The entrance to Blackmere Station was a brutalist scar in the side of the mountain. Massive steel doors, rusted by time and frozen shut by the elements, loomed out of the blizzard. The team moved in a diamond formation, weapons raised. Ilara walked in the center, checking an atmospheric sensor. "Tech, get the door," Marcus ordered. Tech Miller moved to the control panel, brushing away decades of ice. He hooked up a bypass device. "It's an old analog system, rolling codes. Give me 2 minutes." Ilara walked past them, toward the massive hinges of the door. She took off a glove and touched the metal. "Stop," she said. Tech paused. "Doc, I'm almost through the firewall." "The door isn't locked electronically," Ilara said, her voice dropping a decibel. "It's been welded." Marcus moved to her side. "What?" "Look at the bead of the ice here." She pointed to the seam of the door. "The thermal signature is different. The metal was heated recently, then refrozen. Someone inside didn't just lock the door. They fused it shut. They didn't want anyone getting in. Or they wanted to make sure something inside didn't get out." "That doesn't make sense," Silas said, hefting his heavy machine gun. "If they welded it shut, how did the distress beacon trigger?" "That is the question," Ilara said. "Silas, bring the thermal cutter. We are cutting the hinge, not the lock. If we trigger the lock mechanism, it might be rigged." "Rigged with what?" Marcus asked. "If I were designing a secure facility to prevent entry," Ilara said, looking at the massive concrete overhang above them, "I would rig the locking mechanism to the hydraulic supports of the tunnel roof. You force the lock, the roof collapses. It's a denial of area trap. Simple. Effective." Marcus looked up at the tons of concrete hanging precariously above their heads. He realized he had been about to order Tech to blow the lock. "Cut the hinge," Marcus repeated, his voice tight. As the sparks from the thermal cutter flew, illuminating the swirling snow, Marcus looked at Ilara. She was calm, staring into the dark gap being sliced into the metal. She wasn't trembling from the cold or the fear. "You knew about the roof trap?" Marcus asked quietly. I studied the blueprints of the architect who built this place, Ilara replied. Viktor Komarov. He was paranoid. He believed that the only way to keep a secret was to bury the person asking for it. I know how he thinks. And how do I think, Doc? Marcus challenged, trying to regain some footing. She looked at him, the blue light of the cutter reflecting in her eyes. You think that strength is the only virtue. You think that because you can endure pain, you are invincible. But Blackmere doesn't care about your pain tolerance. It is a machine, and right now, we are the foreign objects in its gears. With a groan of tortured metal, the massive door swung inward, falling with a deafening crash that echoed into the darkness below. A rush of stale, freezing air hit them. It didn't smell like a derelict building. It smelled of ozone and copper. Blood, Jensen whispered. That's the smell of old blood. Ilara pulled a flare from her pocket, cracked it, and tossed it into the abyss. The red light tumbled down, revealing a long, spiraling ramp descending into the earth. The walls were lined with frost that looked like jagged teeth. Welcome to Blackmere, Ilara said, stepping over the threshold. Stay off the center of the ramp. Walk on the edges where the structural supports are. And Marcus? He looked at her. Try to keep up. The descent into Blackmere Station was not a walk. It was a slide into sensory deprivation. The spiral ramp, constructed of reinforced concrete, wound downward into the earth like the thread of a screw. The air grew colder, but it was a dry, static cold that made the hair on their arms stand up. As they passed the third subterranean level, Marcus stumbled. He caught himself on the railing, shaking his head violently. Check your 6. Marcus growled at Silas, his voice thick. I saw movement. Shadow, 3 o'clock. Silas swung his heavy gun, scanning the dark concrete wall. Negative contact. Thermals are clear, boss. I saw it, Marcus insisted, his heart rate monitor on the team HUD spiking to 120 beats per minute. Peripheral vision. Something gray. Fast. Jensen, the medic, moved to check him. Pupils are dilated. You're sweating, Marcus. It's minus 10 degrees down here. Why are you sweating? I'm fine. Marcus snapped, shoving the medic away. Just keep your eyes open. This place is haunted. It is not haunted. Ilara's voice cut through the darkness from the front of the formation. She didn't stop walking. It is vibrating. She held up her tablet. A frequency wave was oscillating slowly on the screen. We are currently subjected to a standing sound wave of approximately 18.9 hertz, Ilara explained. Does anyone know the significance of that frequency? Silence. It is just below the threshold of human hearing. Ilara continued, lecturing as if she were in a classroom and not a death trap. It is often called the ghost frequency. At this pitch, the sound wave resonates with the fluid in the human eyeball. It causes the eye to vibrate imperceptibly in its socket. This vibration creates false images in your peripheral vision, gray shapes, shadows, movement where there is none. It also induces a feeling of profound dread and the sensation that you are being watched. Marcus blinked, rubbing his eyes. You're saying the building is making me hallucinate? I'm saying the architect, Komarov, installed massive ventilation fans in the lower levels specifically to generate this frequency, Ilara said. He weaponized the air conditioning, Marcus. Your threat is a fan blade. Ignore your eyes. Trust the thermal sensors. If the machine doesn't see it, it's not there. Marcus lowered his weapon slightly. The logic was irritatingly sound. He took a breath, forcing his heart rate down. Copy that. Trust the tech. Wait. Tech Miller interrupted, stopping abruptly. He was staring at his wrist computer. The localized GPS just died, and the hardline comms are static. We're in a dead zone. We are deep underground. Silas shrugged. Rock block signals. No. Ilara turned, shining her light on the walls. For the first time, she looked concerned. Look at the walls. That's not just concrete. She scraped a layer of frost off the wall, revealing a copper mesh embedded in the stone. A Faraday cage, Miller realized. An active one. This entire level is shielded to block all electromagnetic transmissions, in or out. Which means, Ilara said, her mind racing through the variables, that the distress beacon we tracked couldn't have been broadcast from here. Physics dictates that the signal could not penetrate this shielding. So where did the signal come from? Marcus asked, the tactical reality sinking in. It came from outside, Ilara said, her eyes narrowing. Someone lured us in here. And now that we are inside the cage, clang. A massive sound echoed from the ramp above them. The blast door they had just cut through had slammed shut. They just locked us in, Marcus said, raising his rifle. We're not recovering data. We're the rats in the maze. Situational report, Marcus barked, his military training taking over the panic. Silas, watch the rear. Tech, get that door open. Jensen, on me. The door is manually sealed from the other side, Tech said, panic edging into his voice. I can't hack gravity. That was a counterweight drop. We're trapped. Stop, Ilara commanded. Don't tell me to stop, Marcus spun on her. We need to breach that door before whoever locked us in floods this place with gas. If you blow that door, Ilara said, her voice icy, you will kill us all instantly. Look at the atmospheric sensors. Marcus looked at his HUD. O2 levels, 19. 5%, dropping. Pressure, 1.2 atm. The facility is pressurized, Ilara explained rapidly. The ventilation fans that create the infrasound also maintain a positive pressure environment to keep the freezing air out. If you breach the door with explosives, you create rapid decompression. It won't be an explosion. It will be a vacuum event. Your lungs will rupture. Barotrauma. Marcus froze. Every instinct he had was to fight, to break barriers, to use force. But every solution he had was a death sentence in this environment. So we can't go up, Marcus said, his jaw tight. We have to go down. Correct, Ilara said. The only way out is the emergency exhaust vents in the server core, 3 levels down. But we have a new variable. The person who locked us in, Jensen whispered. No, Ilara said. Time. We aren't just fighting the cold anymore. We are fighting hypoxia. The ventilation is shutting down. I can hear the fans spinning down. We have approximately 45 minutes of breathable air before CO2 levels rise to a point of cognitive failure. Cognitive failure? Silas asked. You get stupid before you die. Marcus translated grimly. You forget how to breathe. You feel warm when you're freezing. You start giggling while you suffocate. Exactly, Ilara said. We need to move fast, but we need to move efficiently. Panic burns oxygen. Running burns oxygen. We walk. We breathe through our noses to retain heat and moisture. Follow me. For the first time, Marcus didn't argue. He fell in line. The woman wasn't just a commander. She was a life support system. They reached the bottom of the facility 20 minutes later. The server core was a cavernous room filled with rows of towering mainframe computers from the 1980s, mixed with surprisingly modern server racks that hummed with blue lights. This doesn't make sense, Tech Miller said, walking toward the consoles. This tech, some of this is brand new. Quantum processors, liquid cooling. This isn't a dead drop. It's an active server farm. What are they processing? Marcus asked, scanning the perimeter. The room was a maze of wires and blinking lights. Ilara moved to a main terminal. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. They aren't mining crypto. They aren't hosting websites. This is a simulation engine. Simulation of what? War games, Ilara said softly. Global economic collapse scenarios, pandemic response vectors, nuclear fallout patterns. This facility is running millions of doomsday scenarios per second. Why? Predictive algorithms, Ilara said. If you can simulate the future, you can control it. This data is worth trillions. Suddenly, Tech Miller chuckled. It was a dry, nervous sound. Trillions, Miller repeated. That's a lot of zeros. Marcus turned slowly. Miller. Tech Miller wasn't looking at the screens. He was looking at the team. And in his hand, he held a small, detonator-like device. I'm sorry, Marcus, Miller said, backing away toward a heavy security door on the far side of the room. The extraction protocol was a lie. We weren't sent to recover the data. We were sent to erase it. And the only way to ensure it's erased is to bury the witnesses. You're the internal threat, Ilara stated flatly. She didn't look surprised. You triggered the false beacon to get a team down here. You needed a heavy weapons specialist, Silas, to clear the path, a medic, Jensen, to keep you alive, and a commander, Marcus, to take the fall. You're smart, Doc, Miller grinned, sweat beading on his forehead. But you're too late. I just uploaded the core to a satellite uplink. The deletion sequence has started, and so has the halon gas system. Miller pressed the button. A siren wailed, a low, mechanical scream. The heavy security door behind Miller opened. He stepped through and slammed the control panel. The door hissed shut, locking him in the safety of the escape tunnel. Inside the server room, red lights began to flash. "Halon gas!" Marcus shouted. "Masks on! Now!" Halon is a fire suppression gas. It works by chemically interrupting the combustion reaction, but in a confined space, it displaces oxygen violently. The team scrambled to pull on their emergency rebreathers. "It won't work!" Ilara shouted over the siren. "Miller disabled the safety protocols. The system is venting the room before filling it. He's creating a vacuum." The air was sucked out of the room with a terrifying whoosh. Marcus felt his ears pop painfully. The pressure drop was instant. "The glass." Ilara pointed to the observation window overlooking the server floor. "It's double-pane tempered silica. It can withstand heat, but it's brittle under torsion." "Silas," Marcus screamed, his voice thin in the thin air. "Shoot the glass." "It's bulletproof," Silas yelled back. "Not if we compromise the structural integrity first." Ilara grabbed a fire extinguisher, not to use it, but for the chemical inside. "Liquid CO2, rapid cooling." She sprayed the center of the massive glass pane. The glass turned white with frost. "Thermal shock," Ilara yelled. "The glass is contracting. Marcus, hit it now. Use the butt of the rifle." Marcus didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, swinging the heavy stock of his rifle with all the torque his hips could generate. Crack. The glass shattered not into shards, but into dust. The pressure differential equalized instantly, sucking the team through the window frame and dumping them onto the metal grating of the subfloor below. They gasped, sucking in the stale but breathable air of the maintenance level. Above them, in the server room, the halon gas hissed, filling a room that was now a tomb. Marcus lay on the metal grate, coughing. His chest burned. He looked over at Ilara. She was bruised, her coat torn, but she was already checking her tablet. "Miller is moving to the surface," Ilara said, wiping blood from her lip. "He has a head start. He took the high-speed service elevator." "We're dead," Silas wheezed. "We're trapped at the bottom of a hole with no way up." "We are not dead," Ilara said. She stood up, her legs shaky but her posture rigid. "And we are not trapped. Miller thinks linearly. He took the elevator because it is the fastest route, but he forgot about the cooling system." "The cooling system?" Jensen asked. "These servers generate massive amounts of heat." Ilara gestured to the massive pipes running along the ceiling. "That heat has to go somewhere. There is a thermal exhaust chimney that runs straight up through the mountain to the surface vents." "A chimney?" Marcus looked up. "You want us to climb 300 feet inside a chimney?" "Not climb," Ilara said. "Ride. The updraft from the server heat creates a vertical wind tunnel, detailed velocity, 45 miles per hour straight up. If we deploy our emergency chutes, or even spread our coats to create drag, the thermal lift will carry us." "That's insane," Marcus said. "If the heat doesn't cook us, the turbulence will smash us against the walls." "The servers are in shutdown mode because of the halon," Ilara corrected. "The heat is residual, it won't cook us, and the turbulence is manageable if we link arms. We become a single aerodynamic body." She looked at Marcus. For the first time, he saw a challenge in her eyes that wasn't about ego. It was about trust. "Miller has the data," Ilara said. "He is going to sell state secrets that could destabilize the entire Western Hemisphere. I am going to catch him. You can stay here and wait for the oxygen to run out, or you can trust the math." Marcus looked at the pipes. He looked at his team. He realized that for the last hour, every decision he would have made, breaching the door, shooting the glass without freezing it, would have killed them. He stood up. He checked his rifle. "We link up," Marcus said, his voice rough. "Tight formation. Don't let go." He looked at Ilara. "Lead the way, Commander." The base of the thermal chimney was a roaring throat of concrete and steel. The sound was deafening, a continuous rushing howl like a jet engine at idle. The air here was hot, smelling of scorched ozone and dust. "The principle is convection," Ilara shouted over the roar, pointing upward into the black cylinder that stretched toward a tiny circle of gray light hundreds of feet above. "Hot air is less dense." It rises. The differential between the server heat, 140 degree, and the surface air, 30 degree, creates a vacuum effect. A draft. It looks like a suicide chute, Silas yelled back, looking up doubtfully. It is an elevator made of wind. Ilara grabbed Marcus's tactical vest and clipped a carabiner to her own belt. She signaled for the others to do the same. We link up. Increase surface area. Spread your coats. We act as a drogue chute. Do not flail. If you break the aerodynamic profile, you drop. Marcus looked at the woman clipped to him. This was the moment of absolute surrender. A Navy SEAL controlled his environment. He didn't surrender to it. But Ilara Voss had deconstructed his reality until only physics remained. On my mark, Ilara yelled. 3, 2, 1, jump! They leaped into the void. For a terrifying second, gravity took hold. Their stomachs lurched into their throats. Then the invisible hand of the wind caught them. It wasn't a gentle float. It was violent. The updraft slammed into them, buffeting their bodies like rag dolls. The heat was intense, a dry blast that instantly evaporated the sweat on their skin. They didn't fly. They were pushed upward by a column of superheated air fighting to escape the earth. Stabilize, Marcus roared, his command voice cutting through the chaos. Spread out, arms and legs. They formed a human star, linked by carabiners. The drag coefficient increased. Their ascent stabilized. They were rocketing upward at maybe 20 feet per second, passing maintenance ladders and sensor arrays that blurred in the gloom. Ilara checked her wrist altimeter. Brace for impact. The vent narrows at the aperture. The velocity will increase due to the Venturi effect. The circle of light grew rapidly. The air pressure changed, popping their ears again. The heat began to mix with biting slivers of ice falling from above. Disengage clips! Ilara screamed. Roll out on the grate! They hit the top mesh grating hard. The wind pinned them against the steel for a second before they scrambled sideways, rolling out of the direct blast of the chimney and onto the snow-covered maintenance deck of the surface. They lay there for a moment, gasping. They had just ridden a column of waste heat out of the bowels of the earth. Marcus sat up, ripping his mask off. The cold air hit him like a hammer. The storm, Cyclonic System Alpha, had arrived. Visibility was 0. We're alive, Jensen laughed, a hysterical, breathless sound. That actually worked. Physics always works, Ilara said, struggling to her feet. She didn't celebrate. She was already scanning the white void. But we have a problem. The storm masks thermal signatures. We can't see Miller. The surface of Blackmere Station was a wasteland. The wind howled at 60 miles per hour, driving snow horizontally. It was a whiteout, a condition where the horizon disappears and the brain loses all depth perception. He could be anywhere, Silas shouted, huddled against a concrete pylon. He could be halfway to the extraction point. No, Ilara said, squinting into the gale. Miller is smart, but he is arrogant. He thinks he won. He won't be rushing. He'll be heading for the high ground to broadcast the signal to the satellite. The comm tower. The comm tower is half a mile east, Marcus said. In this, we'll be walking in circles. You can't navigate a whiteout without GPS. We navigate by dead reckoning, Ilara countered. It is the oldest form of navigation. We know our starting point. We know our speed, pace count. We know our heading, compass. And we account for drift, wind. She turned to Marcus. You take point. I need a standard pace count. Every 100 steps is roughly 80 meters in this snow. Silas, you're the rear guard. Use a rope line. If one of us falls into a crevasse, the others act as anchors. They moved out, a chain of dark figures tethered together in the blinding white. Marcus counted. 1, 2, 3. The wind tried to push them south. Ilara constantly tapped Marcus's shoulder, correcting his angle. Leaning left, she shouted. The human body naturally drifts in a circle when visual cues are removed. It's called veering tendency. Your right leg is dominant, so it pushes harder, curving your path to the left. You have to consciously step right to walk straight. Marcus corrected his path. He realized she was right. Without a horizon, his internal gyroscope was failing. He felt like he was walking straight, but the compass on his wrist showed he was drifting. Stop, Ilara signaled after 15 minutes. They huddled together. We should be at the base of the tower, Marcus said. I don't see anything. Trust the math, Ilara whispered. We walked 800 meters on a heading of 090 degrees. It should be right in front of us. Marcus reached out a gloved hand. He took one step forward. His fingers brushed against cold, hard steel. The support strut of the comm tower loomed out of the fog, invisible until he was touching it. Dead center. Marcus breathed. He looked back at Ilara. She was shivering violently now, the adrenaline of the climb fading, leaving her exposed to the brutal cold. Her coat was not rated for this. You're hypothermic, Marcus said, seeing the tremors. Your lips are blue. Stage 1 hypothermia, Ilara chattered, her teeth clicking. Vasoconstriction, blood shunting to the core, loss of fine motor skills. I can still think. That's what matters. You can't think if you freeze to death. Marcus unzipped his heavy tactical parka. Underneath, he wore a thermal combat layer. He took the parka off. Put it on, he ordered. You need it for combat efficiency, Ilara argued weaky. I have 10% more body mass than you and a higher metabolic rate, Marcus said, draping the heavy coat over her shoulders. And right now, you're the only one who knows how to stop Miller without blowing up the hemisphere. Put the damn coat on, Commander. She looked at him. The commander wasn't mocking this time. It was an acknowledgement of hierarchy. She was the brain. He was the shield. She pulled the coat on. Thank you. Now let's finish this. They climbed the maintenance stairs of the comm tower. The wind screamed through the metal lattice. At the top there was a control booth, a glass-walled box where the transmission uplink was housed. Through the swirling snow they saw a light inside the booth. Contact, Marcus whispered. 1 Tango. Miller, he's at the console. He's uploading the data. Tech Miller's voice crackled over the short-range tactical radio. Wait, no. Tech was the traitor. This was Miller speaking. He had patched into their frequency. I see you, Marcus. Miller's voice sneered in their earpieces. Thermal sensors on the perimeter. You survived the chimney. Impressive, but stupid. Give it up, Miller, Marcus yelled into his mic. You have nowhere to go. The storm grounded your extraction. I don't need extraction, Miller laughed. I just need the upload to finish. Once the data is in the cloud, I get paid. Then I can freeze to death for all I care. My family gets the money. He's in a fortified position, Silas assessed. 1 door, narrow walkway. It's a fatal funnel. If we try to rush that door, he cuts us down. A fatal funnel is a tactical term for a narrow area, like a doorway or hallway, where the attackers offer the best targets to the defenders inside. To enter is suicide. We can't rush him, Ilara said, huddled in the oversized parka. And we can't shoot him through the walls. The booth is reinforced against radiation. It's basically a tank. So we wait him out? Jensen asked. Upload is at 80%. No, Ilara said. We use the environment again. We use the storm. She pointed to the massive satellite dish above the booth. It was a huge concave bowl, currently locked in a horizontal position to transmit to the horizon. It was catching the wind like a sail, straining against its hydraulic locks. The wind load on that dish is immense, Ilara calculated aloud. If we release the hydraulic pressure on the locking pin, the wind will slam the dish downward. Downward onto the booth? Marcus asked. No, the dish is too heavy. It won't snap off, Ilara corrected. But if the dish rotates violently, the gyroscopic torque will sever the hardline cables running into the booth. It will cut the upload. How do we release the hydraulics? Silas asked. The manual release is at the base of the dish, fully exposed to his line of fire. He can see thermal, Marcus said. He'll shoot anyone who moves toward the release valve. He sees thermal, Ilara said, a spark returning to her eyes. He sees heat, so we give him too much heat. She turned to Silas. You have magnesium flares? Standard loadout, 6 of them. Magnesium burns at 3100 degrees Celsius, Ilara said. If you pop those flares and throw them in an arc behind the booth, the thermal bloom will blind his sensors. It will wash out his night vision completely. It's called oversaturation. I throw the flares to blind him. Silas nodded. Who goes for the valve? I do, Marcus said. I'm the fastest. No, Ilara said. You're the biggest target, and you're wearing only a thermal layer. Jensen goes. He's smaller. Marcus, you provide suppression fire to keep Miller's head down. Marcus hesitated. He wanted to be the hero. He wanted to take the risk. But he looked at Jensen, then at Ilara. The logic held. Jensen, you up for this? Marcus asked. The medic nodded, pale but determined. Just keep his head down. Execute on 3, Ilara commanded. 1. Silas pulled the pins on 3 flares. 2. Marcus shouldered his rifle, aiming at the reinforced glass of the booth. 3. Silas hurled the flares high into the air behind the booth. They ignited with a blinding, sputtering brilliance. Even through the snow, the light was intense. Inside the booth, Miller screamed as his thermal goggles whited out, blinding him instantly. Moving. Jensen sprinted across the icy gantry. Marcus opened fire. Crack, crack, crack. His rounds impacted the armored glass, spiderwebbing it, not penetrating but forcing Miller to duck. Miller fired back blindly, spraying the walkway with submachine gun fire. Bullets sparked off the railing inches from Jensen's head. Suppression, Ilara yelled. Marcus, aim for the doorframe. Keep him pinned. Jensen reached the hydraulic valve. It was frozen stiff. It won't turn, Jensen screamed over the comms. It's iced over. Use the chemlight, Ilara shouted. Break the chemlight fluid onto the valve. The chemical reaction generates heat. It was a desperate, improvised chemistry hack. Jensen cracked a glow stick and poured the glowing fluid over the frozen mechanism. It wasn't much heat, but it was enough to lubricate the ice seal. Jensen kicked the valve. It spun. Clunk. The hydraulic pressure released. The wind caught the massive satellite dish. With a groan of metal that sounded like a dying whale, the dish slammed downward, rotating 90 degrees in a second. The thick cables running from the dish to the booth were pulled taut and then, snap. Sparks showered down like fireworks. Inside the booth, the lights died. The uplink screen went black. Upload failed, Ilara said, checking her tablet. We killed the signal. The silence that followed was heavy. The wind howled, but the gunfire had stopped. Miller, Marcus shouted. It's over. Come out. The door to the booth creaked open. Miller stepped out. He wasn't holding a weapon. He was holding a small, black remote. He looked tired, defeated, but he was smiling a cruel, broken smile. You stopped the upload, Miller shouted over the wind. Good job. But you forgot the contingency. What contingency? Marcus aimed his rifle at Miller's chest. I didn't just rig the halon, Miller said, his thumb hovering over the remote button. I rigged the geothermal pressure valves in the foundation. Blackmere sits on a magma vent. If I blow the valves, the pressure shoots up. The permafrost melts instantly. This whole station slides off the mountain. Mutually assured destruction, Ilara said quietly. Game theory. I walk away, Miller said, trembling. You give me the chopper, or we all go for a slide. Marcus tightened his finger on the trigger. A headshot would drop him. But if Miller's thumb twitched, don't shoot, Ilara ordered. The reaction time for a human finger to press a button upon seeing a muzzle flash is 0.2 seconds. The bullet travel time is 0.1 seconds. But the nerve impulse can trigger the muscle even after death. It's a cadaveric spasm. If you shoot him, he presses the button. So what do we do? Marcus hissed. Let him go. Ilara stepped forward, past Marcus. She walked out into the open, coat flapping in the gale. She held her hands up. Let's talk about the math, Miller, she shouted. You want to live. That is your primary variable. Pressing that button violates your primary variable. I have nothing left to lose, Miller screamed. You have your life, Ilara said, taking another step. And I have a counteroffer. The wind howled between them, a physical wall of noise, but the standoff was entirely psychological. Miller stood by the railing, thumb hovering over the detonator. Marcus had his rifle trained on Miller's ocular cavity, the T-box, but he couldn't fire. The risk of the cadaveric spasm was too high. Ilara stood exposed, hands empty, coat whipping around her legs. She stepped closer, invading Miller's personal space, violating every rule of tactical safety. Stay back, Miller screamed. I'll drop the whole mountain. You won't, Ilara said. Her voice wasn't pleading, it was a statement of fact. Because we are in a Nash equilibrium. A what? Miller blinked, confusion flickering through his panic. Game theory. Ilara explained, her tone conversational, as if they were discussing the weather. In a non-cooperative game, a Nash equilibrium is reached when no player can improve their situation by unilaterally changing their strategy. Right now, your strategy is threaten destruction. My strategy is withhold extraction. She took another step. If you press the button, Ilara continued, you die. 0 payoff. If I shoot you, you press the button and we all die. 0 payoff. The only scenario where anyone receives a positive payoff, survival for us, freedom for you, is cooperation. I don't trust you, Miller spat. You'll hand me over to the CIA. Yes, I will, Ilara admitted. But prison is a non-zero outcome. Death is 0. Rationally, you must choose prison over death, unless you are irrational. Are you irrational, Miller? Are you suicidal? Miller hesitated. His thumb trembled. I want the money. The sunk cost fallacy. Ilara shook her head. You think because you've committed crimes to get the money, you must finish the job. But the money is gone, Miller. I severed the uplink. The client doesn't pay for partial data. The money is a variable that no longer exists. Remove it from the equation. She held up her tablet. The screen showed a bank transfer protocol. Failed. Miller stared at the screen. The anchor of his motivation, the money, was cut loose. He looked at the detonator. Suddenly, it wasn't a ticket to freedom. It was just a heavy piece of plastic that would kill him. The human brain can only sustain a state of hyperarousal, fight or flight, for about 20 minutes before the adrenal glands exhaust themselves. Ilara said softly, You've been running on adrenaline for an hour. You're crashing, Miller. Your hands are shaking not because of the cold, but because of parasympathetic backlash. You're tired. You just want it to stop. Miller's shoulders slumped. The physiological reality caught up with him. The fight drained out of his face. I just wanted to retire, Miller whispered. Drop the remote, Ilara said, and the equation balances. Miller looked at her. He looked at the abyss below the tower. Slowly, agonizingly, he relaxed his thumb. He tossed the remote onto the snow. Secure him, Ilara ordered. Marcus moved instantly. He didn't rush. He flowed. He kicked the remote away and zip-tied Miller's hands behind his back. Target secured, Marcus said. He looked at Ilara. Nash equilibrium? Seriously? It's better than a bullet, Ilara said, turning back to the wind. Usually. Command to Bird 1, Ilara spoke into her radio. LZ is hot. Package secured. Requesting immediate dust-off. Negative, Command. The pilot's voice crackled, barely audible over the static. Winds are gusting 65 knots. I can't hold a hover. It's suicide. We can't walk down, Silas yelled, checking Miller's restraints. And we can't stay here. The storm is dropping the temp to -50. We'll freeze in an hour. Ilara looked at the comm tower. She looked at the wind direction. Pilot, do you see the comm tower structure on your thermal? Affirmative. It's a giant heat sink. The tower is a solid lattice structure, Ilara said. With the wind coming from the north-northwest, the tower creates a wind shadow on the south side, a pocket of low-pressure and turbulence-free air extending approximately 40 feet from the base. That's a tight pocket, Doc, the pilot argued. If I drift out of that shadow, the crosswind will flip the rotor. Then don't drift, Ilara said. Come in low. Hug the steel. We will jump to the skid. You don't need to touch down. This is crazy, Marcus muttered. But he was already moving the team to the south side of the tower. The sound of the helicopter approaching was a thudding vibration in their chests. The black shape of the bird materialized out of the whiteout, crabbing sideways, fighting the gale. As it slipped behind the massive steel body of the tower, the violently shaking fuselage suddenly smoothed out. The wind shadow worked. It was a calm eye in the hurricane. The pilot held the hover 10 feet off the deck. The ramp lowered. Go! Marcus yelled. Silas tossed Miller onto the ramp like a sack of flour, then scrambled up. Jensen followed. Ilara stood by the edge. The wind whipped around the corner of the tower, threatening to drag her out of the safety pocket. Marcus grabbed her harness. I got you. He didn't pull her. He braced her. He used his mass to anchor her against the wind until she could jump. They leaped together, landing on the metal floor of the chopper. Go, go, go! Marcus slammed the ramp button. The helicopter peeled away, catching the full force of the storm as it left the shadow. It dropped 50 feet in a sickening lurch before the rotors bit into the air and climbed. Ilara leaned back against the bulkhead, closing her eyes. Her hands were shaking now. Marcus watched her. He reached into his pack and pulled out a thermos. He cracked the lid and handed it to her. "Coffee," he said. "Terrible military grade. But it's hot." She took it, her fingers brushing his gloves. "Thank you." "That thing with Miller," Marcus said, his voice low so the others couldn't hear. "The game theory stuff. Did you know he would fold?" Ilara took a sip. "I calculated a 78% probability based on his psychological profile and physical exhaustion. But, there is always the human factor," she admitted. "The 22% chaos variable. I was terrified." Marcus smiled. It was a genuine smile this time. "Well, you hit it well, Commander." 3 days later, the debriefing room in Virginia was warm, sterile, and safe. The men wore dress uniforms. Ilara wore a blazer. The mission was officially classified as a geological survey equipment retrieval. Miller was in a black site prison. The data was destroyed. The general at the head of the table looked at the report. "Dr. Voss," the general said, "this is unconventional. You effectively led a Tier 1 asset team into a hostile environment with zero combat experience." "Combat is just rapid conflict resolution, General," Ilara said calmly. "I have experience in resolution." "Clearly," the general nodded. "Mr. Hale, your report notes that Dr. Voss's decisions were crucial to the survival of the team." Marcus stood up. He looked at Ilara. The arrogance that had defined him in the beginning, the crossed arms, the smirk, was gone. In its place was the stillness of a man who no longer needed to prove he was dangerous. "Dr. Voss didn't just help us survive, sir," Marcus said. "She commanded. I've served under officers with chests full of medals who wouldn't have made it past the front door of Blackmere. Dr. Voss sees the battlefield differently. She sees the math behind the chaos." He paused. "I'd follow her into hell again, provided she brings a calculator." The general raised an eyebrow. "High praise from you, Hale." The meeting adjourned. As they walked out into the bright afternoon sun of the parking lot, the team lingered. "So," Silas asked, shifting his weight. "What now, Doc? Back to the library?" "Back to the firm," Ilara said. "There are always more problems to solve." She walked toward her car. Marcus followed her. "Ilara," he called out. She turned. It was the first time he had used her first name. "You left this?" He handed her the tablet she had left on the table. "Thank you." "You know," Marcus said, looking at the scar on his hand, "when you walked in that first day, I thought you were a joke. I thought leadership was about being the loudest voice in the room, being the alpha. And now?" Ilara asked. "Now I know." Marcus looked her in the eye. "Real leadership isn't about volume. It's about gravity. You walk in, and everything just orbits around you." Ilara smiled. It wasn't the cold, analytical smile of the mission. It was warm. "Don't get sentimental on me, Hale. It ruins your brand." She opened her car door. "If you ever need a team," Marcus said, stopping her, "for a problem that math can't solve alone, you have my number." "I know," Ilara said, tapping her temple. "I memorized it." She got in and drove away, leaving the ex-Navy SEAL standing in the parking lot, watching her go with the quiet respect of a soldier who had finally met a true commander. Because leadership doesn't enter making noise. It enters, and the world adjusts.